So the topic today is maintaining happiness and prosperity. And some of you may be saying, wait a minute, why don't we start at the beginning? How can I maintain what I've never had? I just took,
Maybe not prosperous, but happy.
well, prosperity is not necessarily equated with the number of golden coins in your bank account.
That's good.
Prosperity is a whole lot of other things. You can be very prosperous simply by having lots and lots of friends, wonderful relationships. You can be prosperous by simply knowing that your needs are met. So, what's really afoot here is recognizing what's true. And that's the difficulty, because the problem we all face is we pay way too much attention to external things. We pay a lot of attention to what seems to be going on in our world. And we pay attention to those things that seem to be missing. And that's the problem. And the problem is that we are actually creating, even when you don't know you are, even when you're not conscious of that process, thinking, believing what you believe about yourself is creative. So, how do we deal with the fact that we may not be realizing everything that's in our dream? Well, there's a wonderful quote by Brene Brown, and she says, "Will freaking out help?" And the answer is always no. What helps is to tune yourself to what exists. What is simply your connection to the divine. Craig read his interpretation of the Lord's Prayer, translated from the Aramaic, and it spoke to that very issue, that we are connected, we are creative, we have infinite power. In fact, it's even recorded in the Gospels that Jesus said that very thing a couple of thousand years ago when he was here on the planet as a man. In John 14:12, it's recorded that he said, "Those who believe the way I believe will do the things that I do, and greater works than these will you do." So that's a direct reference, a direct injunction that you have the same power that I have. And that's the very essence of this translation of the Lord's Prayer, is that we have access to this power. And what gets in the way is literally our stinking thinking. What gets in the way is our belief that we aren't good enough, our belief that lack exists. Lack does not exist. You may believe that you lack, but you do not, in fact, lack. So how do we address getting around these issues? And I suggest that the answer is to pay attention to metaphysical principles, to read. There are thousands of books on the subject. Lots and lots of self-help stuff that you can read. But really, the problem is one of acceptance. Will you be willing to accept for yourself the notion that good is your birthright. That blessings is your birthright. Are you willing to accept it? That's the question. Because it really is simple. What are you willing to accept? Are you willing to believe that you have it all? Because you do. You see, the God that the world has learned of is not the God of my understanding. Much of the world prays to God to send something that seems to be missing from their life. But I suggest that that's a prayer amiss, because indeed God has already done what God can do. Is it your thinking that God has withheld something from a few of us or all of us and is waiting for the right word to come down, the right word to come up from us, the right prayer, the right attitude, facing the right direction, going to the right church? None of that has any bearing at all on what God has done already. Because God has given all. Everything that God has is already gifted to us. It's here in the room, right here with us. It is divine ideas. It is peace that passes all understanding. Because it's available if you will let it in. And the question is, are you willing? That's really the key, because it's not that God hasn't done it yet and is waiting for just the right request from you. God has done it, and God is waiting for your acceptance of the gift that has already been given. It has been given. And it's available right here, right now. You know, the Vedic tradition goes back some 5,000 years. And the ancient rishis taught this very principle 5,000 years ago. And we have the temerity to call ourselves New Thought. There's nothing new about 5,000 years of this tradition. And the rishis taught that happiness, empowerment, and love are qualities of our authentic, godlike nature. They cannot be legislated by rules or laws, but can only be activated by each person accepting their own intrinsic value. So there you have it. A 5,000-year-old tradition says, it's up to you. Will you accept it for yourself? Will you accept that God has blessed you completely, without limit, that all the power in the universe is at hand? It's available to you. Will you use it to create the life of your dreams? Or will you say, I don't know, maybe I should? What if Dave doesn't know what he's talking about? What if that priest who taught me catechism is right, and I really have to suffer? You know, there are religions that extol the value of suffering. Great. Goodness, how can that be? How? There is nothing that is further from the truth. God does not reward suffering. If God does anything about suffering, he says, wow, look what they're doing to themselves. It's not necessary. It's a choice. You know, there's an old saying, pain in this life is pretty much unavoidable. There will come a time when pain will show up. But suffering is totally optional. Suffering is the reaction to pain that says, why me? Why now? How come? What did I do wrong? So that's what suffering is about. But there's no value. The value is in giving you a benchmark to say, here's something interesting. I wonder what the lesson is. I wonder what I can learn from this situation. You know, happiness, truth, is an inside job. You simply cannot wait for the new car, the relationship, the job, the golden coins. You cannot wait for those things to show up in order to be happy. The only conceivable way to be happy is to be that. Be happy for no reason. Be happy because you exist. Be happy because you are the blessed child of God, because that's what you are. So being happy simply is a choice. Be happy regardless. Be happy. I don't know, maybe some of you are familiar with the work of Byron Katie. She says, you know, she, at the time I read it, she was a 67-year-old woman who was in the process of going blind. And she said, I love that I'm a 67-year-old woman going blind because it's happening. And if I don't love what's happening, I'm suffering. Now that is a stretch, right? Would you really love it if you were 67 and going blind? You might as well, because to the extent that it's happening, you might as well love it. Because when you stop resisting, change happens. You know, when you chase after something, it runs away from you. And when you accept that it's already part of you, it manifests itself. So, it doesn't do any good to run from the things that you don't want and to chase after the things that you do want. It makes perfect sense to simply say, I am prosperous, because you are. And as soon as you accept into your consciousness the gifts that have been directed to you, they begin to manifest themselves. And they cannot manifest themselves until they are a part of your consciousness. You simply cannot, as Neil Walsh says in his work, you can't have what you want. Because if you want something, you are sending a message to the universe that says, I don't have this. And the universe says, here's a picture of somebody wanting something. So the universe sends back a picture of you still wanting. So it doesn't work to stand around wishing. What works is to actually say, I have all that I need. I am in the process of manifesting my perfect life. Because that's the only way it'll work. And that's just one of those metaphysical principles that make sense. Because you can't really imagine that God somehow is Santa Claus who's waiting for the good little girls and boys to show up before the presents arrive. That simply is not the way it is. the way it really is God has given to us, the children of God, the ideas in the mind of God that have never left, has given all. All that God is in us. That spark of divinity is in us. And all that's necessary is our willingness to accept it. Willingness to say, okay, God, thank you. Here I am. How can I be helpful? What can I do to be useful? That's the way to be successful in whatever it is that floats your boat. Not everybody is destined to be rich or famous or the greatest athlete of the world is ever known. But you are destined to be the best you that you can imagine. And the way to do that is to work on the inside, to work on your willingness to be happy for no reason at all. Because when you are happy for no reason at all, happiness shows up in abundance. When you are prosperous, and prosperity is measured by the number of friends you have. When you are being the best friend anybody ever had, you will be amazed at how many people claim you as a friend. Because it is the truth that what you put out energetically into the universe is responded to in kind. It's the old saw, what goes around comes around. What you put out is what you get. So, I invite you to be absolutely joyful for no gosh darn reason at all. Just being happy. In fact, you might even go to one of those laughter yoga classes. Just sit there and laugh. Because indeed, God has blessed all of us. Each and every one of us, without exception. Without exception. And I'm sure we all have a list of people that must have been accepted somehow. But that's not true. No one has been left out. You know, there's a phrase in the scriptures that says something like, many are called, but few are chosen. And the better way to read that is, all are called, few choose to listen. So, truly, you have a choice. And you are the one who determines the thoughts that will find a home in your mind. You are the captain of that ship called your mind. You get to decide who comes on board, who gets to ride along on this journey. You, and only you, can prevent stinking thinking. So,